Okay, so now after installing Postman from Google, now you can open Postman and this is the welcome screen which you will be greeted with.
This video is brought to you by Pies Academy.
So first of all, close this create new template, and now the very first thing which if at all you want to do it, I'll show you how to start the dark theme. So inside file we have settings, and over here in themes you can toggle between the light or the dark theme. Okay, so I personally prefer working with the dark theme, but just find out what your preference is and then work along. Okay, so with that, let's get back to requests. Okay, so currently let's go back to the Binance API, and now let's look at the documentation of this particular API and the base URL, okay, or the base endpoint. So currently the base endpoint is api.binance.com. so let's copy it, and then over here let's make a request to https://api.binance.com. Okay, so you can look at the variety of different types of requests, which are the get, post, put, patch, delete, copy, head, options, and more requests like that. So at the very first point we have a get request which is being made to api.binance.com. Okay, so let's look at making a blank request. So click on the blue send button and this will create the request. So if you don't have a request running already, or if you don't have this workspace, click on new over here and then click on request. Okay, so you can give a name to this particular request and then it will open up. Okay, so over here we are making a get request to api.binance.com. okay, so let's click on send, and now the response which we are getting is a simple HTML file which has HTML, head, title and body. Okay, so this is exactly the type of response which we are expecting. So now let's do something where we can test if we are actually connected to the server and if we are getting a particular output as we want it. Okay, so over here let's go down and inside the public endpoints. So now to test the connectivity we have /API/v1/ping. So now we are making a get request to API/v1/ping. So now let's copy this endpoint. Let's go back to Postman, and over here after the endpoint let's paste it. So now we have api.binance.com /API/v1/ping. Okay, so with this let's make the request. So to do that we click on send. Okay, and now the server has returned an empty object or an empty JSON object as the response. Okay, so this is exactly what we are hoping for. So first of all, congratulations, you are successfully connected to the Binance server, and now you can make requests and get response from the server and interact with it. So this is just like you have established a connection with the kitchen when you are talking through the waiter, but now you are sure that the waiter is going to the kitchen and getting something for you. So now just to get some real value from the server, let's change the endpoint to api/v1/time. Okay, so over here instead of ping let's pass in time. Okay, so we have time over here, and now the response which we are getting from the server is server time, and then we have the value for this particular server time. Okay, so now over here this is again a JSON object where we have a key and a value pair. Okay, so now if you look at some more parameters in this particular request, we have cookies. So if the website gives any cookie to you, then those cookies are stored over here. Then we have the header. Okay, so first of all we have the content type, and over here the content type is declared where the JSON file structure is mentioned. So over here we have content type which is application/JSON, and then we have the date, we have the server, and then we have the security protocol, and all of these different parameters are mentioned over here. So the error code which you will get will also be mentioned inside the header file, and that is what you will be looking for. So now let's look at one more request which will give some more detailed output. So we have exchange info. So we have API/v1/exchange info. So now let's go back to postman, and instead of time, let's pass in exchange info over here. Okay, and let's click send. So now we'll be getting some response from the server. So currently over here we have the exchange information, and now we are getting multiple values, and this is a very big response. So currently we have the status, which is a 200 status, so that is okay. Then we have 453 millisecond, which is the time which has been taken for the server to give you the request or to cater the data, and then this is the size of the data. Okay, so now after this, let's also get some more information, or let's get some candlesticks. Okay, so now to get candlesticks, the endpoint is klines. Okay, so let's go back to postman, and over here instead of exchange info we have klines. Okay, but first of all, let's try something where we have misspelled the endpoint. Okay, so I have purposefully misspelled the endpoint, and let's click send. And now currently we are getting a status error of 404, which says the requested resource was not found, and this is exactly what we have hoped for, because we are going to the wrong endpoint. Okay, so now we are passing in klines, and now let's click send. Okay, so now we again have a particular error which is of the code 400, and this is a bad request code, and the message which the server is telling us is that mandatory parameters or the symbols were not sent, and either those parameters were empty or null, or they malperformed. Okay, so this is important because in the documentation of the klines endpoint we have these particular parameters. Okay, and we have still not mentioned the parameter of symbol or the interval. Okay, so now let's go back to postman and let's pass in these parameters. So to do that, the first parameter is symbol. So over here inside key value, the key is symbol. Okay, and the value is ETHBTC. Okay, and this particular value will be passed in through double quote marks, and now let's send this. Okay, so now we have the illegal characters found in symbol. So this is because we have put in the double quote marks. Okay, so let's pass in the value as simple ETHBTC, and now we again have the error which says that interval was not set. Okay, so let's go back to the documentation. The very first parameter which we have set is symbol, which was ETHBTC, and now the error which the server is giving us is that the mandatory parameter called as interval was not set. Okay, so this is just how you are interacting with a particular server and getting the data from it. Okay, so now let's go back to the documentation, and now the interval parameter is not set. Okay, so over here let's give another value called as interval. Okay, so now inside interval, now we want to specify a particular value for the interval. So let's look at some valid parameters for the interval. Okay, so let's say we want the data of 5 minutes. So the interval is 5m. So let's go back to postman, and over here we have 5m, which stands for the interval, and now let's send it. And now as you can see, we have received a response from the server. Okay, and this is just the response which is mentioned or shown to us inside the documentation. So over here let's go back to the klines section. Okay, and inside klines, this is the type of response which we will be getting. So we have the open time, then we have the open, then the high, low, or the closing time, then we have the volume, and all of these different data points. Okay, so this is returned as a JSON object. So now this is the first candle, then we have one more candle, then we have one more candle. So similarly, a large number of candles have been returned to us by the server. Okay, so again we have a status of 200, which is okay, and then we have the time which is taken by the server to give the data back, or to give you some data, cater you with some data, and then we have the size of the data which is received. Okay, so with this we have successfully installed Postman. We have used Postman to make requests, and not just to make simple requests but to make requests which take in a particular parameter. Okay, so that is pretty much it for APIs and communicating using HTTPS.